That's forgiveness. I've seen it destroy a lot of people and a lot of churches and a lot of things. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and we're going to figure out how to avoid some of those pitfalls. So, yikes. Okay, before Jesus came, and this is just a general overview, what did it look like for the Jews before Christ to have their sins covered or forgiven?
Someone else.
Go ahead. I can keep going on the topic.
So they would, they'd go to the temple every time they would sin, and they would sacrifice an animal, and they would have to follow the law perfectly every single time. That was the only way to have salvation in their eyes. To follow the law perfectly. And every time you messed up, no matter how small it was, you have to go and sacrifice an animal.
Yeah. We're gonna add to it.
It was just sacrifice.
What about the sacrifice that was very important? We don't like to talk about it much, but what is it? In particular, it gives us forgiveness. What is it?
They would have to spill the blood.
The blood. Without the blood, there's no forgiveness. Okay, so what did that foreshadow?
Christ died on the cross.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yes, perfect. Awesome. So that's the forgiveness we have with God. And it was, where do we want to go here? Let's get somebody, I say I got 6 verses. Who wants the first one? All right, let's go right around this way. You take first, second, third, fourth, fifth, 6 up top. Okay, I'll get you next time. Okay, first one, Matthew 6:12-15. Second one, Matthew 26:28. Number 3, Acts 2:38. Acts 10:43. Ephesians 1:7. And 1 John 1:9. And when you get it, you can go ahead and read it. Matthew 6:12-15.
I'm Acts 2:38.
You had Acts 2:38. Yep.
Forgive us our debts as we also have forgiven our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For if you forgive men when they sin against you, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive men their sins, your Father will not forgive their sins.
Okay, remember that one, but not right this second. That was going to be followed up next. Matthew 26:28. Matthew 26:28.
Okay, there's one.
And while he's finding that, we remember we already said it. We talked about the Old Testament and Jesus' sacrifice. Hebrews 9:22 says, without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness. So if you wanted that address, it's Hebrews 9:22.
This is my blood. This is the blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many forgiveness of sins.
Okay, go ahead.
And Peter said to them, repent and let everyone of you be baptized in the name of Jesus Christ for the remission of sins, and you shall receive the gift of the Holy Spirit.
Okay, next.
All the prophets testified of him. To everyone who believes in him receives forgiveness of sins through his name.
Okay.
In him, we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of our trespass, according to the riches of his grace.
And final.
If we confess our sins, he is faithful and just and will forgive us of our sins and purify us from all unrighteousness.
Okay, so This is telling us how we are reconciled to God, and it's nothing we've done, it's what Jesus did on the cross for us. After all that was read, what does that make you think of? Or how does that make you feel? Does it firm up the forgiveness aspect of what Jesus provided for us? Because without that, we have had no chance of going up to heaven ever. Anybody else, something they read that just kind of sparks, or are we all pizza sleepy?
I just feel like I'm talking too much.
Some people do, some don't. Should be in my point of view. I'm talking. That's right. That's fine. Some are talkers, some are not.
I'm gonna stop.
Okay, so we see how important forgiveness of sins is with our relationship with God. But what about our forgiveness with each other? That something about our forgiveness with God is based on our forgiveness of others. And hold that thought right there. Who read that first one? I want you to go ahead and read Matthew 6:12-15 again.
Forgive us our debts as we have also forgiven our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For if you forgive men when they sin against you, heaven will forgive you. But if you do not forgive men of their sins, your Father will not forgive your sins.
That's in the Lord's Prayer. Forgive us our sins as what? We forgive others. There's a condition there. Have you looked at it as a condition, or did you just say, forgive us our sins and we'll forgive others?
It's more, okay,
You'll go ahead first and I'll get her.
so it's more of forgive us our sins as we should be forgiving others, because it's kind of in the heart. If you're not willing to forgive others, why should God be willing to forgive you?
Right.
Because if you're not going to be, if you only want what's good for yourself, I mean, it's not showing like a good heart.
Excellent.
Yeah, and also it's kind of a bit of a petition, because like what you said, forgiveness is about from the heart. And if so, essentially, in what Spirit says, forgive us our debts as we forgive others. Essentially,
Mhm.
what that's saying is, what that is saying is that we're asking God to forgive us, but it's also very important to remember that we really need to forgive others, and also, what the thing about going into the kingdom of heaven, but it kind of goes along with whether you're a believer or not, because if you're a believer, you know that Jesus forgave you. It's way easier to forgive others than if you have no idea that He forgave you.
That's right. Good job. Good job.
Also, it's kind of like if you don't forgive someone, that can add so much more weight on yourself more than the other person that you're trying to forgive, because it brings in anger and guilt and so much hatred, even if you don't realize it for something so little, but you still carry that weight, and it can affect your relationships with so many other people.
Well, you guys nailed it right off the bat. So, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, but what if you have so much anger towards somebody that you can't bring yourself to it?
Ooh,
Well,
let's start. Daniel first.
Think about it this way. How much do you think you've hurt God without realizing? How much hurt has God felt from just you alone? And then what did He put up towards, like, He sent His Son to die, right? Because we all know that. And that alone is just incredible, because that was because He forgave us, right?
Somebody capitalized on what he was trying to get to.
So, I mean.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is that a yes or no?
Go first.
Okay. Good.
So God sent His Son to forgive us because He knew that what we had done was so much that we could never make it right. And so He laid aside everything we have ever done in the history and the future of all humankind to out of love for that person.
Okay, yes, but y'all are both bringing up the point of that he forgive us, not how we are supposed to forgive others.
It's really has to do with, first off, if you take it to God, he can help you with that. Because God is forgiveness. And so taking it to God could really, like, help your heart to forgive that person. It's always gonna be difficult to do it yourself. Most things like that are difficult are hard to do yourself. But God can really, help you with those things.
Okay, want to add to it?
So I definitely see what both of you are saying, but my view on it kind of is, like, you have to want to forgive somebody in order to, because a lot of the time I find myself going, like, I cling on to that hatred because it gives me a reason to feel more emotions and gives me a reason, when really I know that the right thing is to forgive them or to apologize or whatever it is. And so you kind of have to find that balance and pray a lot about it and go to God and just to give you the heart to be able to let it go, because you want to just hold on to that and keep it as something against them, so in the future you can let it out and have an excuse to behave a certain way or why another person behaved that way.
Yeah.
And it's hard, but that's why I thought so.
We are made in his image and says he forgives and forgives.
Is that easy to do?
No.
But,
Are you sure?
but is it impossible to do?
It seems like it.
Yes, it does at the time. And it's a process. Forgiveness is a process. It's not, oh, hey, I'm a Christian. Oh, you just murdered my family. Yeah, I forgive you. It's not that easy.
Do you think it can take a long time to forgive somebody?
It can.
Is that reasonable?
It can, yes, it can sometimes, as we are, I will use that word, baby Christians, that we're young Christians, it can take us a long time to learn how to forgive. Because I think we wrestle with, and I'll say for myself, here's part of my testimony. When I was before I was a Christian and I got saved, and for maybe 4 years after I was saved, I struggled with God's forgiveness. And I always had this going through my mind, how can he forgive me for all this stuff I've done? Because I keep coming to him for these same things over and over and over. And I clung to the verse, and I don't remember the address in the Bible, but I am a worm. I didn't cling to, I am a child of the living God, or, a son of the King. That's what I needed to focus on. And when you focus in that direction, it makes a world of difference. And he works on our hearts. And it will happen, I guarantee it. It will.
But what if it?
Well, there's a lot of what ifs in the world, but you're saying it's impossible.
Just, it's not impossible, but what if it didn't?
That means you're
What if it
unwilling.
did?
And what if you're unwilling?
Well, then that's something that you have to work out.
I think just keep giving it in this situation. I'll get to you too. Just keep giving it over to God over and over. Have him work with your heart. And our relationship with God is based on our hearts too. It wasn't very good when we first came to him, but when we, in a process of time, you think that as soon as we're saved, that the fruit of the Spirit just bam, we got them all. I've been a Christian for almost 30 years, and I was saved late in life. I'm still working on this.
One thing.
No, go ahead. This is great because you're talking.
What if how do you know the difference between you forgive somebody and you're still left with the haunting memories with them, or you just didn't forgive them and you're hanging on to it?
Well, I think it's how your heart is. Is there still anger and bitterness there? So in other words, is just because we forgive somebody doesn't necessarily mean we forget. Now, the difference between not forgiving somebody is you're boiling with anger, it's still hurt, and it's controlling your life over what happened, as opposed to I've forgiven them, I still remember it, but it's not ruling my life.
But what if it's less anger and more fear?
Well, that's more fear, like of it having meant. Forgiveness comes more of, I am no longer angry at you for what you did. I might still remember what you did. It might still make me like this was unfortunate, but it means you're no longer angry at that person. for that end, meaning it's not, taking over and making irrational thoughts after.
Saw some hands back here.
So first point, I think that it, a lot of the time, isn't possible to forgive somebody because you're human, but with God you can't. So like other Christians who have somebody who did a terrible thing, they hold on to that for a long time, even if they think that they forgave them or whatever, like there's still the anger there. But I think that as long as you go to God and really pray about it and just give it to him, then eventually, it may take years, but eventually your heart will change and you'll be able to forgive them. But it's just kind of-
Definitely time. Anybody want to chime in back here? Yes.
I think kind of along some of the lines that we're talking about, like the anger issue is an issue. I really believe between you and God, any of us and God, we're all going to deal with anger. When somebody hurts you, forgiving them, I don't think means there are consequences for whatever that person did to you. And there are consequences when we hurt somebody else. And we need to examine our own hearts too, and see, wow, where have I been the one that actually needs forgiving? But I think the anger points to the wrong. And I think it's worthwhile to take some time with the Lord and go, this happened, to spell it out to him and go, these are all the things that happen as a consequence of their action. Now I'm dealing with this, and this, or these are the ways they hurt me. And then actively, we talked a lot about surrendering it to the Lord, surrendering those things in detail to the Lord, every single one of them. Because what can happen sometimes, I've noticed with me, is I'll go, okay, I know they did kind of this thing, right? And then there are these secondary things that happen as a result of maybe the big thing. And I forget that, oh, as a result of this big thing, here's this shockwave over here. And it brings me right back to, well, oh, they hadn't done this. No, now I'm angry again. And so this is just an approach, but I think it's worthwhile to actually in detail go to God with every bit of that hurt and ask him to help you to forgive each consequence of the action and trust him to work in your heart. Confess the anger as sin, because we can be angry and not sin, but we can be angry and sin. And I've done a whole lot of that. So I get that. But we really do need to confess sin as sin and then go, okay, Lord, help me to turn away from this and trust you. And every time it comes up and I'm still angry, help me to re-surrender it to you. And I think praying, the word says pray for our enemies and those who spitefully misuse, use you, all these things. That's real stuff. Like if you're praying for somebody, it's harder and harder and harder to just see them as completely worth holding in bondage and debt for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Yes.
And Satan also uses that as a clutch when I say, okay, yeah, I forgive you. And he goes, oh, but remember. And then you go, oh my gosh, you're right. You gotta forgive over and over again. I don't know how many of you have seen or read The Shack, but at the end of it, he's like, but what if I don't want to? He's like, what if I forgive him and then it comes back? He's like, don't stop forgiving. He's like, you might have to do it for years, you might have to do it for the rest of your life, but it will get easier and God will release that pressure and it'll still hurt, but you will learn and you will genuinely want to forgive. Just it will take a while.
It never takes years, decades, however long you want to forgive them.
To want. And we're going to talk about that too. Go ahead.
Well, so I had a question, for Monster. You said that, when there's this shockwave of things that happens, say somebody hurt you and then it just like ends up all these other things happen because of it, or somebody didn't hurt you directly but did something and it ended up affecting you. You said that you have to ask God to help you forgive every single one of those things. And you said that when you remember and you go through and you're like, okay, so I forgive them for the big thing, but then you like go through it again and you realize, but they did all these things and it makes you angry again. I
Mm.
wonder if it would help. I mean, like, do you kind of have to forgive them backwards for the shockwave and end up with anything that they did at the beginning?
Possibly. I think these things come up, they'll just pop up here, pop up there. I think as they come up, that's when you go to God and go, oh, I'm still really seething about this one. And you confess that and you deal with it.
Mhm.
What if they affected your entire life and how you live today?
I understand that.
But that's also your
Yeah.
choice to live that way.
But how would you not live your
You're giving it over to God.
We're,
Okay.
we're gonna take a brief intermission, just real fast. And then we'll send out another Zoom.
Okay, and then